Are you ready to join me in transforming fear to freedom? That's the objective of the show. Are you ready to explore with me and my guests? Are you ready to get into the deep and play? This is where it's at, and that's what it's all about. No medical advice here. Use discernment and decide for yourself if the information is right for you. All views and opinions expressed on this show belong to the individual and are not necessarily shared with the producer of the show. Want more details? Go to letsgetrealchattingwithcatherine.com. Now let's get real and have some fun. Who are we going to explore with today? Come on with me and let's get into the deep. Hey, welcome back. It's Catherine from Let's Get Real, chatting with Catherine. And today I'm so excited to be chatting once again with Norma Cowie. Norma Cowie has been studying metaphysics and spirituality for over 40 years. She's a real gem. She's got some amazing insights and things that she's discovered that I haven't heard from anyone else. So I love that. And so we're going to explore with her and get into some of those questions. But after this show, go back and check out her profile on lgrcc.com, and you will find that it explains all of her experience, plus all the books she has available to help you yourselves and go into your own personal journey, as well as, you can work with her, you can get readings from her, you can do the soul origin, which is something new that she's doing. All of this stuff is very exciting to me, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoy chatting with Norma Cowie right now. Yes, welcome back, Norma Cowie. I am absolutely thrilled to be chatting with you once again. I love the fact that you have been doing this for so long. I say so long, but really about 40 years. That's, a long time compared to most people I know anyway and that I chat with. But what I love, Norma, is that you're practical. You've taken this stuff and you say, okay, I want to know the spiritual metaphysical because we're trying to live in this world, this physical world, and to explore it that way. So you don't keep it in the woo-woo place, you bring it into the realistic place. Now, it probably wasn't always that way. I know we talked about it before on the show, but I really want to get into some of you've been discovering some new things. You've got some new ways of looking at things, or some different ways of looking at things that we can explore and share with people, because I see a lot more people wanting to know now. Now, how about you?
Yes and no. I think there's always a percentage that is on that edge of wanting to know more of what's going on. Mm-hmm. And because of what's happening to our planet and the vibration around the planet, the transitions that are going on, the changes, the awareness, finally people are beginning to be aware on so many different levels, like in the physics world and the math world and just basic science. I was just reading this morning when they're suddenly aware that all these mountains underneath the sea, which they didn't know existed, and are growing. So there's a whole lot of stuff that's going on in our planet, which I truly think affects a lot of things. And so, yes, there are people that sort of wanting to know, what it is. So that turns their spiritual button on, you might say. Let me understand what's happening. But at the same time, you've got a lot of people that don't want to know, don't want to understand, don't want to be aware. And I think in my years of being on, you might want to say, the crest of many things, I always think it's about the same percentage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it seems like new, but I don't know that it is more. I think there is a percentage of people that go. I think the only thing is now that when people get maybe a little bit frightened, I don't think they're frightened enough yet. I don't think they're really concerned yet. Whenever people get kind of fearful, whether it's economics, whether it's the health things, like we've got Ebola in Africa that's finally finding its way into the U.S., we've got a war ready to explode in the Middle East more than normal. I think, but we're unaffected here in North America. That's one of the things, we've lived, except for 9/11, and down in the States they have more than we do, with shootings and stuff like that.
Right.
We don't have fear around us. We don't have to worry about whether we're going to be still alive tonight, kind of thing. It's not top of our thinking process. So in my way of thinking, it's when that fear factor begins to grow, we begin to look for other things.
So you're saying fear is a good thing?
No, actually, I don't think it's a good thing, but I think it's what drives most things. I think it's what drives most things. I mean, I remember when I can't remember when I didn't want to know about God. And it was really interesting. I had a client the other day, and I said, "Can I use the word God?" And she said, "Well, actually, if you or what would you prefer me to use?" And she said, "Allah." And I went, "Right, of course," because I've had Muslim students before, so it's the wording means the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But we want people to be comfortable and being able to work with this. So for me, have always wanted to know about God. And it took me a lot of years to put it in a perspective that I truly understood the energy that's in the universe that we can utilize. And knowing that it's always there. Knowing that we are loved beyond measure. Knowing no matter what, I can use that as a transformational force for myself and for others. For me, I'm very comfortable with that. But many people are not. Many people don't want to... They're frightened. When it came to my mother's passing, she was frightened of dying. I've had other people I know where their parents are really ready to go and they don't go because they were raised in a Christian background that no matter what has created a fear factor, because if they are still carrying any regret, any guilt, anything that's going on, they're afraid they're going to pay for that.
Yeah. Right. So you're just saying that the fear, it seems to be the thing that drives most of us to look for more, but we don't have to do it that way. We could actually open up to understand what's happening on the planet in a more loving way. We could do it through love, through curiosity. We don't have to wait till we've got something burning our backside to make us do it.
That's true. And because that was me. I always wanted to know, and I was always wanting to grow myself and understand how things work. But a lot of people come in to study with me and have sessions with me who are going through trauma and want answers.
Yeah.
And slowly that other world opens up to them that there is something more. Because, a lot of people in the younger years now, they don't have a quote, religious background.
Yeah.
They just raised. So they do not understand about energy. I know my daughter was saying, she works with a number of young people, and she said, they don't seem to have a philosophy, Mom. My kids were raised, because I was growing up, I was young when I had them, so they were raised with me learning and the philosophy of life, like what you put out, you get back, all these kind of things. And they've carried that on into their lives in other ways as well. And now they're realizing that not everybody has that. They don't have an awareness that there is a force in the universe that is there. And that force in the universe is not there to judge, but to create what you want in your life. So they don't know about how thinking is so important, because we talk a lot about the mental element, and even in the metaphysical realm, one of the things I work very strongly these days with people who study with me, we're taught to think of everything in duality. It's positive or negative, it's good or it's bad. And so all we're doing is judging. Yeah. We're judging, this is a positive thing. Who said? It may feel good, so that's good. Is this what you want? So I really work with my students. In fact, right now in my new tarot class, we were going hammer and tongs at this last Tuesday night, because some people are so saturated with, this is positive, so therefore, and I'm saying, hang on, let's forget the duality. Is it what you want?
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, because you can't. What's positive for me is not maybe positive for you, or vice versa. But the other thing that is interesting to me is, I really get that there's some people, in my generation, so I'm a little bit younger than you are, but when we're taught about God, so there's this energy, this source, God, whatever you call it, Allah, the universe, that is there. We're here and it's there. So having the awareness that there was something else is one thing, whatever that might be, if you had that awareness. But what I feel like we really missed is the understanding about the energy, our own power. Like it's like a lot of us kind of got the sense you came to the earth, make the best of it, you know, run away from the tigers as much as you can, whatever, and then do your best, and then you get to the other side, and that's where life really happens, when you're after you die. Like here is just sort of hanging on, getting through. And so even if there was an awareness of a God, there wasn't an understanding of, like you say, what you think about, what your own power. We didn't get that. I mean, I don't ever remember being told I had any power to do anything. I was totally, if I did it right, I would be rewarded by God. If I did it wrong, I'd be condemned by God. So it's really, I really get how so many people think they don't matter, because I never thought about it that way until just now. It's like, well, yeah, if everything was dependent on something outside of us to make it happen. So
well, the first thing I want to, because I've got about 3 or 4 things I want to address from what you said. The first thing is, actually, this energy is not outside of us. It's everywhere. So it's inside as well as outside. It's an energy. It's not a thing that looks at you and that judges or condemns. It's an energy that absolutely loves you and is there for you. So it's about having, I often say to people, it's like sitting back into a beautiful, comfy chair, because it is there to support you. And it's in you. It's everywhere within you. So it's about making that connection and knowing that you're absolutely loved without measure, no matter what. It doesn't matter what you do. And I want to address that. So now, okay, we come into Earth. And basically, to me, Earth is our practicum. So when we pass over, we go to the level of our spiritual awareness. It's like water finding its own level. So you might be in a school learning new things. You might be playing and having fun, etc. So when it's time to come back to choose a life, whether you choose it or whether you're sent or whether whatever reason, because there's a lot of myths out there that say, oh, you choose your own life. Well, that's not necessarily true for everybody. Oh, you choose your parents. That's not necessarily true. So there's a lot of mythology that is not based on anything that I've ever seen that is really real. The thing is, you're where you are. So whether you chose your parents or didn't choose your parents, whatever, you're alive and you're well. So now you get to learn what you learned in those other realms. Does it work? Does it manifest? Is it real or not? And what happens to a lot of us, because we don't remember what we were supposed to be learning, right? Right. Astrologists will tell you it's all in your astrology chart. And that, to a degree, is probably fairly accurate. But to me, that they don't. There's lots of other realms that you can be working in. But what I see is what gets me, and really a few months ago, actually, I really had this come clear when I made a comment to a friend, and she said, "Oh, we won't have to worry because we'll be on the 5th dimension, and they, whoever they were, are going to be on the 3rd dimension, which is where we're basically considered that we are." And it really bothered me. And then I sat down and, as I often do, contemplated, and I realized, why are people not appreciating Earth for what it is? It's beautiful. It sustains us. Why are all these people wanting to go to some other dimension rather than live and be happy here? And give the Earth Mother value, appreciation, love, all those things to support her, because I'm sure she's just worn out. That's my sense, is she's worn out from trying to hold everything together, because the Earth is always working to strike balance. This is a duality planet where everything is balanced, and the Earth herself has to deal with that. And she's got a bunch of people that are living on her, taking from her, and not giving 1 cent back, because they have no consideration. All they want to do is be somewhere else. And my sense is there's no way you're going to be somewhere else until you've totally learned what Earth is about, which is emotion. Earth is an emotional place. That's why people get sent here, according to me. People get sent here deliberately, brought here, dumped here. People get stranded here. When I talk about my soul journey work, and people who have been on spaceships and somehow end up here and can't get off, and they have to assimilate being in here, their beingness. And And it's like, well, you're here. So what is this place? It's all about this, because our bodies are part of the planet. This is the bodies that we have. We don't have different bodies. So the bodies is our emotions, because out there in space, it's not emotional as we are at all. I haven't found it yet. It's different. It's more mental, more awareness, but there's none of this emotion that we have. Now, so what do we do with this stuff? And the only thing I can think we have to do with it is acknowledge it and be at one with it. Well, sorry, let's go for it.
Well, I just want to let people know as well that when this is being broadcast, they'll be able to go back to Norma's profile page where she has done a talk recently, and I've put it into 2 parts, and she talks a lot about this concept of coming to this earth and being sent here and the soul journey. And that's the other thing that I'm hoping we'll address a little bit, because this is another way that people can work with Norma about this soul origins. And I did this with Norma a while ago, and it was pretty mind-blowing. I had a lot of fun doing that, Norma. It was exciting. So I highly recommend it if you're really interested in that. But I like what you're saying, that you're here now. And so, let's figure out what we're doing here. What about this planet? And you're saying it's an emotional planet. But I have to stop you, because you said this before, and looking back, I realized I didn't really ask you to get into this more, because we hear this all the time from spiritual teachers, and that concept that there's people that believe we were invited here. We were sent here, we chose to come here. And some people, I've heard it said, chose to come here because they had enough experience in other places to help raise the vibration of the planet. Light workers were asked to come here, and that's why there's so many people here on the planet at this time. That's why. So is it like sometimes you're sent here, sometimes you're invited, sometimes you choose your parents, sometimes you choose your path because you want to learn certain things, and other times it's designed for you? And tying in with that, I heard you say this about watchers? What the heck were they called?
The overseers. The overseers.
Overseers. Okay, that's another part of that. So I just kind of wondered what the heck is it? Can you address that? I'm sorry for such a long question, but...
Okay, I think originally I was showing how there were original people, beings, 12 different places in the cosmos came here. Pillars of light, I saw them as, and each one came from a different aspect of the galaxy, and they were invited. It was like a call went out because they were needed here, and the souls went out and dispersed and integrated with the beings that were here. And apparently, in archaeological terms, there is a big jump in people's awarenesses. And of course, there's a lot written, like in the book Initiation by Elizabeth Ash, about the space beings coming and amalgamating with the regular peoples as well. So there's been a lot written about that. But that was a very, very long time ago. And one of the things that very often people don't come into consideration with is how a soul can split. One of my first soul journeys, which I'm calling them these days because I realize that's what they are, the soul origin. We go back to the origin, but it's like the journey of the soul.
Right.
Is one of the early ones I did, which really surprised me, was how even here right now, a soul had split into 3 parts. And one part was the person I was working with. There was another one that was connected to a male in Europe. And there was one that wasn't in body, which is happening. And it was really interesting because I do a lot of integration work. And how do I integrate a person when they're in another part of them in another body, right? So I kind of had to do some little bit of a dance around that. And very often forget about this Splitsville thing that goes on, because mostly the soul is just the soul, and the journey of the soul that goes throughout time and space. It seems like at some times most of us have spent time in some way related to space travel. And one of the interesting things was I had a client in, and I said, oh, you're working at the space station, but you have no desire to go on the spaceships or even where they're going and what they're learning. She was just doing what her job was. And she said, yeah, that's right. I have no desire to be out there or to know what it's about. And that's one of the things that I found as I've done more and more of these, what I found really interesting is that when we go to discuss them later, people have said it really helps them understand who they are. Mm-hmm. Because the things that I see has shown basically the concept of who they are, like how they are or what they are, and they found that very, very helpful, which has been interesting. So as I've done more, it's kind of taken on a really, in a way, a very nice awareness of that. So what we've got is we've got this life that we've had before Earth. And it was through doing my transformational work that I even got interested in this, because very often how the soul, I couldn't figure out why the souls were coming in angry, or they were coming in nervous and all this. So and that began to some degree my interest as to what was going on before. So now I can take a look at what went on before. I also know that past lives are important. Of course, I've been working with past lives forever and ever and ever. And again, finding out whole lots of different information about how that applies to us.
Can I ask you, can I interrupt there? When you say you had all this life before Earth, other lifetimes or experiences, once you come into the Earth, and then we have past lives, so we have reincarnation, do you stay in the Earth cycle? Like, do you go, you know how you're coming back through these soul origins, you're in different planets, different dimensions, different places, then you come to the Earth. Does the Earth cycle of reincarnation, does it stay there, or do you go from like a lifetime on Earth and then to another dimension and then back to Earth? Like, does it bounce around, or?
I haven't found that. What I found is like when we, now this is my hypothesis, is that when we come into Earth's vibration, then because it's emotional, what happens is like a fly gets caught in a spider's web, we get caught on what we call the wheel of life. And when I asked my guide at one time, and I was fed up with what was going on in my life, and this is a number of years ago, and I said, how do I get off this wheel? And he said, first thing you do is you let go of the concept that you're here to learn. Which at that time, that's what we taught everybody. You're here to learn something. And I said, what? What?
That's still very, very much what people are taught.
I know, I know. And he said, I said, what? But we do learn. He says, hang on a minute. Think about this. Actually, what you're doing is you're coming to an understanding. And when you come to an understanding, you may not learn anything else because you understand it. And what I began to realize was the more I came to understand things, the less I needed to learn. I didn't have that thing because I was always looking for the next lesson, what the thing was. And this is where I was getting angry and frustrated with. What is it? And he said, you just need to understand. And do you know, a huge lift went off my shoulders at that time. So now I always ask myself, what have I come to understand here? What am I standing on? Because you stand it. When you understand, you stand upon it. It's done. And it doesn't have to necessarily be anything more. So me being me said, yeah, but what else to get off this wheel? And he said, judgment. Let go of your judgments. Do you know how many judgments we have? It's amazing. Spend my life working out, letting go of judgment. So as I become less and less judgmental about things, it doesn't, I actually went through a time period where it doesn't mean you don't discern things, but it's like you don't hold the judgments on. It just is as it is. So that's when I began to create the concept of everything just is. And what do you want to do with that? But it's, that was a really big breakthrough for me and in a lot of what I started teaching, because we got away from this pressure of, and everything's pressurized. It is not pressurized, because when we can feel all our feelings, When we are connected to that source of being that loves us, and we can accept that love, we then are free to go somewhere else and or stay.
So when we let go of the judgment, the emotions, the heavy stuff, the idea that we are here to learn, we let go of that, then we can stop this. Is that what's keeping us in the earth cycle?
Yeah, the key is yeah, because if you think you're always having to learn, you have to create things to learn. That's the root of it, right?
Yeah.
Because oh, I've got to learn something. Well, I must have something to learn, so therefore I'll create something. And so life isn't always as peaceful and easy as we want. It doesn't mean that life will never, ever not be peaceful or easy. It just means that sometimes when it comes up, it's like, okay, what am I getting from this? What is it? What am I coming to understand? And a lot of it is letting go of your fear, letting go of the emotion. I teach in the past life segments that at the end of lives, the regret, the guilt, and strong emotions is what we bring with us because we haven't let them go from before. And then we just keep recreating them until we get fed up. And that's where often is like I call it the light goes on and people start their spiritual journey when they get to the point where there's got to be another way.
Would we ever come back here if we got all the lessons? Like, just like, not all the lessons, but if we got all the understandings, if we weren't pulled back in by the lower or negative emotions, but if we could, is it possible, like you were saying?
Stop right there.
Yeah.
Stop you there because you're judging your feelings right there.
Okay.
This is a very good thing to point out because that's why I interjected. When we are in polarity, that it's a positive or negative emotions, you're judging your own feelings. So actually, you're double judging. You're giving yourself a whammy. Now, when we say the harder emotions, like anger, for instance, if you really examine anger, really you're angry because you feel helpless. You have an event in your life and it's not the way you want it, so you get angry, but really you're helpless because you don't know how to change that event, that situation. But if you go deeper, you'll find you really feel unworthy because you're not connected to source about this thing anyway, whatever it is. And so the key is connection to source and has us feel worthy to know that either we have to accept totally that that's the way it is, or we're free to make a different decision about what we want to do with it. So it's really about finding your value. You talked about personal power earlier. I'm going to bring it back to that because we need to know that we have this power within us, not only to manifest and to create. I do 3-hour workshops on clearing blocks from manifesting and stuff sometimes. I sort of take little segments from my intensive and teach them here and there. But manifesting is that people think, oh, we just think it is. And that's not true. No. There's a myth out there that says, if I do what you love and the money will follow. That's not true. No, most people, it's not true at all. There's loads of myths out there that just little statements that people make. And a lot of them, I get like, because nobody takes the time to really take a look at how things work. How do we create our reality? I always say we create by how we think, feel, and respond. No one talks about it responding.
No.
Do you know that anger energy and passion energy are very similar, except one's a little dirty in the sense of it because it's usually a little bit vengeful. But if you clean up that anger energy, you've got passion. And when you have passion and you pour that into what you want, man, it's likely to happen faster than it will. But timing doesn't always work on someone's schedule. That's what I found in my life. So there's a lot of variables out there in the new thought movement that in some cases I find when you examine these sayings that people are living and basing their lives on have no relativity at all.
Well, and one of the things for people watching is to know that Norma's got a number of books available which also have some of this great insight in case you're looking for specifics like spirituality with money. You've taught about that. You've written it down. People can access this and sit down and review it. But I want you to repeat that. You manifest by thought, feeling, and response.
How you respond is often has a leader. And actually I got all that from the tarot, which of course I've studied for 50 years. The wands show us how we think. The cups show us how we feel, our energy that goes behind things. And the sword symbology shows us how we respond. And very often it's how we respond to things is really what's manifesting the next thing.
So is there an appropriate response, or is there like, if you would you say a response with passion is going to take you to manifesting what you really want better
passion comes from emotions. Passion comes from the emotions more than anything. But it's really is like, if a situation comes along and you're reacting defensively, that's a lot of energy that's backing things away. So that's going to repel, not embrace, right? So very often what happens, and if you're in judgment, for instance, you're going to be responding much more, say, to what I call defensively. Like, and we get defensive because we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to be wrong.
Yeah.
There's a huge thought form out there that says, and I really think this comes out through, excuse me, but the Christian basis of the right and wrong principle is that we don't want to be wrong, because if we're wrong, that makes us really wrong, and we're judged and we're no good.
And we're going to be punished. So the thing that's really cool is that you're using, like you talk about astrology, tarot, all these things are, like, it's like they all have a little different piece of the perspective or the insight.
Numerology, I use the birth date a lot. I use a lot. I use it all the time. The birth date. I'm not an astrologer. My family is full of them. And I studied it for 3 years. But I'm an intuitive, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, I do know enough of the astrology language. When people talk to me, I know what they're talking about. But to me, it's a mental game of able to figure things out, and that didn't work for me. I can look at a chart and intuit it because I know enough basis. The same thing as with my tarot card readings. I can intuit what's going on here because I realize, oh, I'm an intuitive. I'm not, it sounds funny, but I'm not a mental person. I come from all this storage in my head, and that's how I teach people how to read through my books and courses, is to read the cards, not remember what the cards are meaning, which is a little bit false, because we look at the cards and get an idea of what they mean when you're learning, but then you go, what does the card show you? Because there's so many within the symbolism that will take you, and how to link that with this card and that card and the other card to make the story. I always say we're storytellers, and in being a storyteller, you're telling a story. And that symbology will tell you that, and then your intuition fills it in. It's amazing, actually.
But, you know, Norma, it comes back for me to that question is, okay, why are we here then?
To experience, for sure. To experience ourselves, to see ourselves, to know ourselves, to gather knowledge. One of the things the soul journey has taught me is that curiosity is amazing. When the souls come out and they start going, it's like some of them, like I have a friend of mine, for instance, that spent a long time being a space traveler, which she absolutely loved. But then it was kind of like, oh, I think I better go see something else, right?
Right.
I've seen this. And it's kind of like in life, you know, you get a little bit, after a while it's mundane. You might love it tremendously, but let's go see what else is going on. And so she started flitting, what I call flitting around, because there was nothing really to grab hold of, and then she ended up in not a very nice planet. And that's when my first visit with what I call the overseers, because her soul literally got taken out of that vibration and put in a healing place, because she was, it felt to me like she was being chemically burned. And that was the first time I kind of ran into what I have come to call the overseers, because I couldn't figure out who on earth has done this, because we're taught that we have a freedom, right? And which we do. We have a lot of freedom. But there seems to be a point where, and someone asked me recently about this when I was really explaining about this particular journey of my friend, and they said, well, why did they do that? I said, because she was being damaged. And just as we send social workers in to get kids out of a household that's being beaten or whatever,
right,
or abused in some way, shape, or form, it's like they don't know who they are. I don't know. They all look the same to me. They're very tall. They're very white. I don't see any features. They're definitely humanoid looking to me. Maybe to somebody else they look different. I don't know. But they definitely, and it's part of my research now, to a degree, is to figure out who these beings are. Who are they? Now I know that they're there, and they've shown up, as they showed up in yours, I believe. And I've seen them more. I've seen them more now. Now that I'm aware of them, and I'm aware more of the process of when the soul is created and comes out, they seem to be there. I have a funny story. This client of mine, it's almost like they check to see the value, which I wasn't picking up before, but I have more and more. They check to sort of see the soul and see what's in the soul and stuff. And this one particular one sort of said, oh, this is a special one, and put it to a side and forgot about it. And this was interesting. So the little soul is out there kind of looking around, just like a little kid would, right? And goes, oh. Anyway, as I'm looking at this, all of a sudden, and it reminded me of Gulliver's Travels, because it's like this big face looking at this dimension. It was the fairy dimension of all places. And he's sort of looking at this, looking at all these little beings running around, and he's big. He looks big compared to them, right? And in the meantime, it's like the overseer's going, what happened to that one there? And they're running around, kind of not really running around, but that's how, they're like, where is it? Oh my goodness, here, they take it. Now, what was really interesting in this soul, I would love to spend more time with this soul, actually, that he was really taken to learn things. Went in and learned. When I talk about learning, actual learning, school learning, he was taken here where he learned a whole pile about sacred geometry and how the universe fits together. Then he was taken to the artistic dimension where he learned about colors and how to intermerse colors. And then he went to the mental dimension where he learned about how thoughts work and all that. Like, he was really schooled. And in fact, at one point I said, I have a feeling you know a heck of a lot more than I do. But
he wasn't aware of that?
No.
Oh.
He knew something, though. He knew there was something. I think we always know, and I always felt that when I was a kid, there was something. And my father would get upset with me, because I'd say, I'm here for some reason. I'm here to do something. And he'd, don't talk like that, you know.
Well, I know. A lot of people feel that way, Norma, and then other people say, your purpose is just to be. And it's like, okay, that just is frustrating as heck.
Purpose is to be, but those of us that have missions or come to do certain things, we are, I'm going to say led. We're led.
Yeah, and it's a feeling inside you, and I really, before I didn't get that, I kept pushing that aside, but I know there's something in me, it's the same thing. It's like, there's just no denying it. There's been times where I've been on a path and I go, okay, you know what? It's not seeming to work out. I can't seem to get it together. I'm not needing to do that. And then I'm right back at it again, and I can't stop doing it. I know I'm on a path. And then there's other people, and it's pretty clear when you watch them, they pretty much just live their life. They don't ever, they do, and I don't mean it in a mundane way, they just do. They don't seem to have anything that's just really driving them. And they're happy.
I love to teach. I love to speak. I love to speak to crowds of people. I'm in heaven when I do that. That doesn't always happen, but to think, and several times in my life I've got burned out, or I'm just fed up with everything and try something that never works. It has never worked.
Yeah.
And it's like, get back to where you're supposed to be. You know, you're supposed to be just. So one day I remember, I surrender. I absolutely surrender. I surrender. I will do my work. That's it.
But the thing is, you know, when you, I really get this, that you've done the work, you've done the research. That's what you're curious, and you're curious enough to go like further into it, to go right back to the beginning with soul origin. Like, holy smokes, like I've never heard anybody do that. So to me, you're kind of like the metaphysical scientist without a laboratory, but you know, you go beyond. Like, you hear something and then you go, okay, and you have the means, you have the gifts to get in there and really go through the process and go through time and find out things and answer things, then bring it to us. What would be, I think it would be fine if you just did it for yourself because you're curious, but the fact that you do share it with the rest of us, I think it's really important that we we have these opportunities to get this information, because especially now we have a lot of people who, it seems like you say, the energy is changing, and we're kind of, more people are sort of, seems to me, to be tapping into their psychic gifts or their connection to source, or something's happening. There's a lot more people talking about spirituality, metaphysical things, and not all of them have done their work. That's my experience. Not all of them, they kind of know it, like you say, mentally, but they maybe don't know it practically. And I'm not saying it, I mean, it's not right or wrong or whatever, and I'm not saying it's, yeah, it just is, but it's really cool, and what I love, to attract the kind of people that have done their work so that I can bring them to my audience.
Which is wonderful. But you know, one of the things is that the people who are, and we'll say, have got the mental concepts, very often attract people, because people like myself, who are very down to earth, and as someone says, no bullshit, right?
Yeah.
This is how it is. That's hard, because it's talking about assuming responsibility. And the majority of people truly don't want to assume responsibility. And even myself sometimes goes, oh, where's my mommy? You know, where's somebody? Because, and it's like, come on, you know, you just have to assume responsibility.
But that's what I hear, that I've heard that quite a bit lately, is this, that people are starting to get it. You know, we know it's a free will planet. We talk about freedom. But the majority, and I don't know that this is a truth, but this is what's being said. The majority of people don't really want to be free, because they're scared to death of freedom and the responsibility for their actions. Like, if I'm really free, then I have to decide everything. I have to, you know, and they just don't want it.
I had a really distinct message given to me one time when I was very upset in a relationship. And I lived in a beautiful home, and I stood at my I always remember my front door. It was a beautiful oak, double-doored front door. It was gorgeous. And I remember thinking I needed to get my daughter to come and get me. And my voice said, this voice, doesn't say much often, but when it does, you know it very clearly, said, and so when are you going to accept 100% personal responsibility? And I was like, I'm standing there with my hand on the door going, see, when you think, that's the question being asked. In a way, I was posing a thought form out there, like, and it was like, get with the program. You're not assuming personal responsibility, which ended up, I did, and I left that relationship and began my next step of my journey, which has led me to all the soul work that I ended up doing, because at that point I wasn't doing that at all.
But what do you think is the okay, beyond what you're exploring and seeing and finding, what is at this 2014, you know, we still have some really uncomfortable, maybe it's not good, maybe it's not bad, I don't know, but it's uncomfortable, chaos, war, killing and stuff going on this planet. And we have people that, we've been saying we want peace for eons, it seems like, and it doesn't seem to have happened. So I'm just wondering, what is the point now of where we're at with technology, with people like Norma Cowie, who are capable of telling us that we are more than our bodies, that we are spiritual, that this is an emotional planet, that emotions are not bad, that they're emotions, that's it. What's the point of, I guess, what's the point of us coming to this higher understanding, or this deeper understanding? Like, I hate to say this, but, you know, the old ignorance is bliss sort of sometimes does make sense to me. But, I mean, I couldn't live that way either, but why? Why now?
Okay.
Why?
Let's go back to your word peace. You know, people forget the basic metaphysical principle. What is on the inside is reflected outside. Mm-hmm. And I've done lots of learning based on that whole tool. Like, if something is outside that upsets me, I don't worry about what's going on out there. I look inside, because I know it's something unresolved in me.
Right.
And one of the things that really got to me years ago was everyone's running around peace, 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 peace. And I thought, until you find peace within yourself, how do you expect the world out there to be peaceful? And so to me, it's an individual journey. Each one of us needs to come into that peaceful mode where we learn, we care, we work with others and do what we can, and whether it's a healing mode or a psychological mode, which is more the area I really work in, transformational area, having people come into their full power so that they can create. But I have to be peaceful inside of me. Am I peaceful 24/7? No, I'm not.
I have to laugh when I hear somebody says something on Facebook, social media. You'll see somebody will be going on about peace and how we need to come to peace. We don't want to go to war. But their post is like, you bunch of morons that don't believe in peace. You're just a bunch of idiots. We should kill all you guys because we want peace and you don't. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, what a beautiful example of, where does peace starts within, you know?
Peace totally starts within. And also I want to make one more step, acceptance of another's difference. Just because someone comes along and thinks I should be locked up because of my, I'm looking at my crystal ball and my cards and my crystals and whatever. Not that I'm a big crystal, but I have some beautiful crystals in my living room. And people think that I'm totally nuts, but it's I accept that. That's their viewpoint, and they're entitled to that. Now, I do not believe that they have a right to come along and have me carted out. No. But it's like the accept. But if you're not in reaction, this is where we go back to reaction. We create by reaction. If you're not in reaction to whatever they're saying, and I'm going to give you an example of what happened to me very recently as an example of a reaction, then you're not going to have any animosity. This happened to me a few weeks ago, and I laugh about it now. When I first, because it was something I'm very big on words, and that words do not trigger you, right? So anyway, when I first started out doing a lot of my radio and TV work, I was considered, like tarot cards were considered fortune telling. And I spent many years, decades teaching that I am not a fortune teller. I am a psychological reader. I call myself a metaphysical psychic life consultant. Psychic life consultant is normally what's called. So I'm going to do a talk at our local celebration center on a Sunday, talking about, believe it or not, preparing for the final journey. And this fellow comes up to me and said, "Oh, nobody told me you were a fortune teller." Well, I went up, I literally, like, I'm not a fortune teller, I'm a psychic life consultant. But I knew I'd reacted to the word, right? And I apologized to him later, and I came home and did a process, because I was up speaking at a conference last weekend in Kelowna, and someone came up and said something about being a fortune teller, and I went, well, I'm not really, but there was no reaction around the word. I just said, I'm not really a fortune teller. That's not what I do. But the difference, but I didn't know I was so charged on that word from all those years ago, because no one has called me a fortune teller for, I don't know, decades.
Yeah. Well, and people who are, probably people who are still not really familiar with a lot of the metaphysical work and things, maybe would still say that, because they...
Well, the person is, though, this is what made it funny. This person has done a lot of work, and... You see, it's a thing in the head that as a reader, you tell fortunes. Well, people tell me, I just had a gal phone me up there just tell me the other day, everything you predicted in my reading is coming true. And I said, oh, really? Because I don't think I predict things, but I do.
Yeah, well, but it's the word fortune teller. It's got the old, stigma to it. That's all.
But what I'm getting at more, and it's not so much that, of being a fortune teller or not a fortune teller, it's that a word triggers you, and I was not peaceful. I was not accepting, because I was triggered by that word. And that's why words are so important. Like right now, I have taught Muslims in my classes, I've taught Sikhs in my classes, I've had lots of Catholics in my classes. Maybe not going to church, but I think once you're a Catholic, you're always a Catholic to some degree. Sorry, I've seen that.
But I was raised Catholic. I would agree with you, Norma.
It's there in the DNA somewhere.
Yeah, that's right.
and the thing is the acceptance, because we're all seeking. So some have brown skin, some have white skin, some have red, prickly skin, kind of like I do. Some have all sorts of things, right? But we're people. Doesn't matter the color of our skin or our religion that we were raised in. We all want the same thing. We want to live comfortably. We want to have food. We want to enjoy our children and grandchildren. And unfortunately, the way the society is going now, many people who have had are not having anymore, or vice versa. And the world is changing, and it's like we know that at some level. Like I'm very interested in the Earth, what the Earth, the Sun, the cosmos does, and how our Earth responds. Like the other day, I found out they go on about global warming. Well, the scientists are now saying global warming is caused by wind currents. Now, this morning when I was reading about these mountains underneath, saying we don't really know how that heating up of the magma coming up is affecting wind currents. The sea currents and the wind currents. The wind currents make us rise up or rise down. People forget the Earth is consistently trying to balance, which is another thing we do in our lives, is to balance our lives out. They forget that. They all go into the woo-woo stuff as far as I'm concerned about this or that, some influence here. Hang on. Our sun has been bombarding us with huge radiation, that our shields are coming down, and our Earth is struggling to combat it all. It's tilting. It's tilting.
I was talking to someone recently on a show. It hasn't broadcast yet, but and he was saying that he had this near-death experience, and the angels had taken him to the other side. And one of the things he was shown was the Earth and the going through the transition. And basically, the good news was on the other side, we actually do eventually get to that peaceful state. But he was saying, when I said, well, I guess, change is hard. We weren't that. We didn't easily accept the automobile when it first came into play. And he said none of that was supposed to happen that way. We were meant to be with electricity, not with the oil, not with the, like Tesla and his free energy. That stuff was actually supposed to happen. It was kind of got railroaded by the corporations that were more interested in the other. So we weren't meant to go that path, but I guess we did. So now that kind of makes me feel like, hey, if we weren't really meant to go that way, but we did, we have a free will planet, we did, and now a lot of us are saying, gee, we kind of like to do something better, then it must be possible. Then it must be...
Definitely possible, but will this... You see, if we go back over his... Actually, I'm going to stop and come back a bit. One of the things that amazes me is that people do not look at history. They don't look at history of what happened even 200 years. But very often what we do is, because everything in the universe is spiraling, and so it has cycles, and that's what I look at people's lives of these cycles,
right,
and how it starts, is they don't look back there to see what happened. Like 5,000 years ago, I think that, I always thought it was 10,000, and someone said it was 5,000 years ago, we had a mini ice age. Global warming triggers ice ages. I knew that because my first husband was a geography major. And when they started talking about global warming, I thought, why aren't they talking about the ice age that follows? Right?
Yeah.
Now, what happens to us as humans? Many of us aren't going to live through this. And I sometimes think that people might think I'm a little cool or non-feeling when I talk about this, because something has to happen cataclysmic. I don't think it's here yet, but something is going to have to happen cataclysmic, because that's how the world in the Earth pattern happens. Chaos happens. Mountains arise out of nowhere. Earth disappears. We live all around the water. We know the water's going to rise. So and it's so funny, I ran into a couple who had moved up, about 2 hours from me, into the valley. I live in the valley. I don't live by the water, right? And they said, yeah, we just figured it was time to move away from the ocean. Yeah. But I was hearing stories of this 20 years ago where people were moving up here to get away from the tidal wave. Yeah. Like it's amazing, these thought forms that are out there. Now maybe one day they will occur.
Well, it happened. I mean, Atlantis, Lemuria, those things happen,
And it'll happen again. And the thing is that we're all running, all we can do is each one of us learn to take care of each other. Because I think this is the road that we need to go on, instead of judging each other and, you've got dark skin, you've got curly hair, you pray to Allah and not God. I was telling someone the other day, I wrote a book, my third tarot book, because I had so many letters saying, because I used the word God. God to me is just a word. It's a masculine word, they say.
Yeah.
Giving heck, because I didn't call it goddess. So I went, heck with you. So I wrote it in capital letters. Instead of saying, and I said every time, instead of saying God and I'm not getting heck, I'm going to write it. And really that's what it is. It's an it.
Yeah, and it's the word you're using to talk about something so expansive. Like, there is no word. Think about it. But it occurs to me what you were saying about how, when we die, and if we've got the regret and the shame and the blame and all that stuff piled in us, if we haven't let go, we're going to come back into another lifetime as that beautiful little baby, but we're going to also have all that crap. And that kind of makes me realize...
Let's make a point. When we come in, as soon as we have an emotion, we reach back to our past life when we remake the same decision, which locks us in. But if we haven't cleared it out, we lock it back in then. So we don't walk in with it all, but we slowly accumulate it.
But that makes the whole cycle that we've been saying, why do we keep recreating more? Why do we recreating this? Well, it makes sense, because if the emotion attached to something similar, we end up making the same decision we made from our last past experience, which could have been it makes sense. If we're going to change the world, like people are expressing this commitment to, sounds to me like we've got to let go of having all this judgment around these emotions. Like, you get mad, you're angry, be angry. There's nothing wrong with it. That's what we're here for, right? There's a difference between being angry and expressing it and being angry every day of your life because I don't know, that's a little bit different, isn't it?
Well, it is. The thing is, remember what I said way back was that when we get angry is because we're helpless.
Right.
And so we can get indignant, I think is a better word, where we get indignant at how things are handled, and then we can speak up about it in a very perhaps unemotional, logical way, because people respond to energy. So if you're not involved, then often people will listen to you if you have the appropriate words. Okay. More about speaking out about what. It's like I kind of wanted to break some of the myth thoughts that are out there. Like, let's see things from a different perspective. But if I come in and say, oh, you guys thinking this is ridiculous, no one's going to listen to me. So I just said, I've just found in my work that this is not true.
Yeah, well, and that's how you're going to do it, is by people listening to the whole conversation and not just, coming in and attacking somebody. You're wrong, I'm right, I've figured it out, you're stupid. That's not going to work.
We're back in that duality, making you wrong so I look right. Hey, no one is right, no one is wrong, it just is. And does it make you feel better as a being? Does you grow? Are you feeling that love energy? Are you peaceful? Are you happy? Do you know joy? Can you love? All those things. And it doesn't mean that a lot of people think if you're that, that's too soft. I know I had some problems very early that, if I was that, I'm going to be really soft. Actually, I find the opposite. I'm much stronger in what I believe and think and feel. Much stronger. I have
Well, I find that for me, I always say I reserve the right to believe what I believe today and change my mind when I feel like it. Because the more every day I learn something more. And the other part of it is, I think when you stop worrying about convincing someone, like I used to feel like if I figured something out, somebody would always challenge me, and then I feel like I had to prove it to them. And half the stuff you can't prove anyway. So it works for me, this is what I believe, and I'm good with that. And what I liked about what you said about acceptance, and I never thought about it this way, I always saw acceptance as being able to accept another person. Okay, they're that way and I accept them.
what I didn't think about is they don't like me. Can I accept that?
Right.
That to me is very cool. So,
and remember that why they don't like you is because there's something in them that they're seeing that they don't like.
Yeah, but if I got a big reaction, then there's something in me that's big. But so I love that.
Most of us want to be liked and accepted and loved and know that we're all okay, because we've all come from backgrounds where we haven't felt so good. The bottom lines are either I'm unlovable or I'm no good. If it's a mental bottom line, it's I'm no good. If it's an emotional bottom line, it's going to be I'm unlovable. And so until we work with that, it's amazing how that can still have little pieces. It's like we can get the bulk of it, and then this little piece comes out, and you go, where did that come from? I thought I dealt with all that.
That's for sure. Well, this has been, we've been chatting for a good long time, and I know there's lots of things. We're going to talk again in a couple of weeks and explore some more. So if people are watching this and you have a specific question you wanted to ask Norma, you want me to ask her, email it to me, add it to the comments, kathpublish@wildroseinternet.ca. You can email me the question and we can talk about it then, but I know we're going to get into this more. But for right now, Norma, is there anything that you really wanted to make sure I know you're a myth buster these days, and I love that you are, but is there anything that you really feel like, I really just wish I get this across?
I think at this moment of time, as I sit here and ponder your question for a second, is really about take a look around your world and see what bugs you. Because whatever's bugging you is unresolved inside. And then say, where do I do that? Or what is it that I'm reacting to? So that you really understand that because we do need more acceptance. We need acceptance, we need tolerance in a way, and it's more than just loving. We're led there. But it's more like, I think it begins with accept. To me, I always say love is acceptance and forgiveness. And those two elements, acceptance comes up so often in life. We just have to accept things as they are. So I think that's what I'd like to leave us with, is the idea of to accept your world and then decide what you want to do to change it.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
My pleasure.
All right, so for the rest of you, like I said, take a look at lgrcc.com, go to the guest page and check out Norma's profile. You will find out how you can work with her, you can get her books, you can get her, listen to her audio or recent chat, and go back and listen to previous shows. It's been so much fun, and I really appreciate you, Norma.
Thank you.
Until next time, take care.
Wasn't that amazing? Thank you to my guests for sharing with us today. Thank you for watching. Feel free to share the link. You can join us for live shows by going to letsgetrealchattingwithkathryn.com and listen to the replays from the show page, preview guests, and explore links to our Facebook fan page, WordPress blog, and more. We are creating an exquisite world. Until next time, take care.